Hey everybody, this is the Rogue Overland Adventure Chat show. We're on episode 1. I'm Nick Savacci.
And I'm Mike Schaefer. And in this very first episode, we're going to talk a little bit about who we are, why we're here, and what this show's all about.
As discussed, here we go. Mike, let's get into this. You want to start with our backgrounds, or you want to start with why we came up with this show?
Yeah, let's do it. I think the show was your idea from the get-go.
Yeah?
So let's start with you, man. Why are we doing this show? Why'd you drag me into this?
Why are we doing this show? When we started Rogue, it was a lot about learning as we were going, and we kind of got to a point where we saw a lot of people need information, right? There's a lot of misinformation out there.
Tons of it.
And with the social media and all of that, there's people going out that maybe don't quite understand that they're doing something that might be harmful to our ability to continue to go out, or harmful to themselves and their vehicles. And so a lot of what we've tried to do is be able to put good, legitimate information out there.
Yeah.
And so we really didn't have an avenue for that at the level that I think that it should be done.
Yeah.
And so that's when, man, I was kicking it around. I was thinking to myself, Mike's got a ton of background. I've got a ton of background. And people love podcasts.
Yeah.
I mean, I watch podcasts I listen to them and I watch them on YouTube.
Yeah, we put down a lot of road miles, and that's one thing I always go to because I get tired of listening to the same 10 songs over again. So
Right, yeah. So why not do it in a show podcast type format so that we can present specific topics and get into them as deep as we need to.
Yeah, I think it's great. I know when you brought the idea to me, I'm like, well, frick, I love this idea, man. You know me, I'll sit around and talk crap all day long anyway. So I love talking. A lot of these subjects and stuff I'm super passionate about, and educating people, and I think it's a great idea. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I love it.
What is your background? Because I know you and I've been wheeling probably about the same amount of time.
We've been wheeling a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to admit how old I am.
Right. Old enough to be wise, and not but still young enough to be adventurous.
What did Carter tell me today? He says you're aged. You're well aged.
Well aged.
And I was like, I like that.
It's
a
almost
little bit of maturity.
like a soft slap in the face.
I think I'm going to take it as the compliment side of this, and not, coming from my 13-year-old, I know it was an insult, but
okay. So let's get into that then. Let's talk family first. So since you and I both, and we can bounce back and forth real quick. As you know, I have the 3 kids, which get out and adventure with us all the time.
Yeah.
Zoe, Oriana, and Xander, and then my wife Vicky, who also gets out and adventures all the time.
Yeah.
And so family is a big thing for us. So I definitely come from that background of getting out with the family. Like when I first started adventuring, it was going out with my mom and dad, and then my brother and sister, and we would go everything from hikes to dirt biking to off-roading to going out in the boat and camping on the lake for the weekend, stuff like that. So I
didn't realize you guys were boat people back in the day.
Man, yeah.
That was one thing my family didn't get into. I think that boats were just
smart.
Boat was always that thing you just threw money at, and Dad was like, "We got enough problems around here."
Right. Yeah.
Anyway,
well, I tell you what, it's funny because I learned more than once. As you know, I come from a pretty humble background. I learned more than once, like when you're out on the river, right, you start your trip going upriver so that if the boat stops running, you can take the current back to your trailer.
Your dad was a smart man. I met him. That makes sense.
So early on though, we did a lot of time out on the lake and water skiing, tubing and stuff like that, and camping out of the boat. So so family's a big thing to me, and just from there we basically went, just kind of progressed. It was dirt bikes and stuff from when I was real tiny, and then we got into the off-road trucks and stuff, and then to all the stuff we're doing today. And I think it would be good for the audience for us to go through like maybe the rigs that we've had in the past. But before I jump into mine, so why don't you touch on, because I know you're deep with family as well. So
and that's actually funny. So I've got same as you, wife Andrea. She's super awesome girl, puts up with me, all my project vehicles, which is huge.
And a Rebel Rally.
And she's a Rebel Rally competitor, and which is awesome because she drugged me into doing mechanical support for those guys, which I absolutely love. Got a crew there. We can talk about that another day. But 3 kids, same thing, and pretty close. I think we're a little bit older than you, just your kids, just a little bit. They're all really close.
Yeah, so. I think each of them are like maybe 2 years.
Yeah, they're almost stepped almost from Carter down. But so I mean that's kind of how we hooked up with you guys in the first place. Was the whole reason we met was kind of a fluke. Ice cream social. And I tell people all the time. We were headed home from mom and dad's house. I think we were up there working on my Willys with dad, and we were headed home. And I'm like, hey, these Rogue guys are having a ice cream. It's hot. It's summer. Let's get the kids some ice cream, and then we'll head home. And met you guys, the family. And I think when we got in the car that night, I remember saying like, they got 3 kids just like us, man, and they're out willing and camping. I'm like, these would be good people to hang out with,
I remember my wife comes over and she goes, hey, there's this other family with 3 kids too.
Yeah, I think the conversation
and
went
our kids were tiny at that time, both sets.
I probably, I don't even remember how many years, it might be 6 years ago, but I think we were still at least rocking 2 car seats across the back row, maybe 3.
Yep. So you got the 3 kids.
But yeah, I got the 3 kids, and kind of the same thing. We grew up, my dad was Air Force, so we moved around a lot, and I think some of my earliest memories were squirrel hunting back in West Virginia with him. And then we lived in Arkansas, and I remember in Arkansas, he bought a little S10 2-door Blazer, 91 maybe. It was awesome. Red interior, white truck. Had the typical generator, had the brush guard on the front, and a good set of tires. And I remember just running around the woods on base in Little Rock with him, squirrel hunting and going through the mud holes. And that was kind of my introduction to off-road. But we always camped. We had a little utility trailer. Dad had all built out. Dad's super handy. That's where I got a lot of my passion skills from, was him. And we'd haul a lot of mountain bikes and stuff. So we'd haul the mountain bikes up, go camping all the time. And we drug that thing all over the place. Got it stuck a couple times.
Nice.
Just kind of progressed into pop-up campers and stuff. So that was kind of my beginning, was doing a lot of that running around and stuff. And then as I got into high school and stuff is when I kind of jumped into the off-road scene through a couple friends and stuff and doing that. But we kind of grew up, same thing, military, Air Force, they didn't Dad was an E-nothing back in the day. So, and he always wanted, it was awesome. He always wanted to spend time with us, and that, they didn't make a lot of money. So we worked with what we had. We built stuff. We fixed what we could, and that's how I kind of got into it. I didn't get into the dirt bikes and stuff till later in life. Actually, Andrea is the one who drugged me into that. Believe that or not, but
So that's probably a good segue, talking about the handy parents, because you're extremely handy. I'm handy enough, and your dad handy. My dad, same thing. He can take anything apart, figure out how it works, put it back together. So kind of with that more humble background and the, sort of the need to work on things and learn how to fix things, that's probably a good segue. Let's chat about sort of the, the rigs that you've had, just a sort of synopsis of what'd you start with, and then kind of what did it progress to?
So I started out, my first truck was a 83 S15 long bed pickup. Had a little 1.9 liter Isuzu motor, 4-speed trans, would do 60 mile an hour on the interstate wide open. And my dad actually bought me my first car. And I remember him coming home one day and he said, hey, I bought you a truck, come help me push it in the driveway. And that was kind of how that started. And I'd been working with him for years. I remember dad bought the neighbor's car one time to pull the engine out of it and put it in his pickup truck. So that's how we grew up,
Been there. 2 cars into
2 cars,
one car.
And we built 1 car out of it. And my mom and dad tell stories about me at 5 years old, dad yelling at mom because she's trying to run the engine hoist for him. I'm in the bathtub and he's like, well, Michael can do this. And she's like, well, just go get him out of the tub then, And so I remember playing with timing chain sets dad had pulled out of crap on the garage floor, like they were little tank tracks and stuff. But anyway. So that was my first car. I drove that for a few years. Dad took a week off of work. We sprayed it in the garage with a real no joke spray gun. It was John Deere green. It looked cool at the time.
Heck yeah!
But
from about 25 feet.
Yeah, it was. At that point, I had sanded for like 5 days straight, and honestly, I didn't even care anymore. I'm like, it looks good. And I've hated body work ever since, but it's horrible.
Takes too much time.
Oh, it's horrible, man. But anyway, so I had that. Sold it. A guy I worked with at the time had like an 86 Toyota pickup and absolutely loved that thing. 4-wheel drive. Couldn't afford a Toyota. I wanted a 4Runner. Couldn't afford it. Ended up buying a 91 S10 Blazer 4-door.
Gotcha.
And that was my first off-road rig. And I really didn't know nothing about nothing back then, you know. So I built it out, you know. Dad and I built a roof rack for it. And we lifted it. You know, back then when you're in high school, it's
torsion bar crank,
bar crank and Explorer Pro Comp Adeleafs that were 2-inch lift, and they're about that long.
Wow.
You know, I'm probably exaggerating, but they were shorties. You know, they were probably 1.5 feet, 2 foot long. Yeah. And you can imagine the spring rate that Pro Comp put into those to get 2 inches of lift out of something that short, you know. And, you know, airing down was not even on our mind back then. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing. So we're bombing around the desert. 40 pounds of PSI in the tires, you know, with stubby Adeleafs and cranked up torsion bars, beating the tar out of ourselves.
Shaking your teeth right out of your
know,
mouth.
And, you know, trying to hold my GM dash together as we're cruising down the road. And, you know, that's how we started out. And I remember, you know, the first time I ever went rock crawling, me and my buddy had a Nissan hardbody.
Nice.
And we come up to this little waterfall. I mean, looking back, it was probably a foot tall, you know, and we drove up it and we just thought we were the toughest things in the world, you know. So ran that for a few years, ended up with a Toyota Tacoma first gen, so a 2001 Toyota Tacoma.
Okay.
And Andrew and I built that over a course of like 9 years. And I mean, that's kind of a lot of those parts. We can get into that later, but a lot of those parts are actually what's in Little Black now.
Gotcha.
Because we just kind of started with that.
And buddy, for everybody listening, Little Black is the 2004 runner.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about that too. But so ran it for a couple years. First kid came. You know, you guys, I think, went through the same thing. We went through this period where we were having kids and pregnant, having kid, pregnant, you know. And so when Carter came, he started rolling around with me, and it was an extended cab, so nothing. The seat didn't fit in the back, so he was in the front seat strapped in.
That's the one that's not 4 doors.
It's not 4 doors.
Just a little extra,
just a little extra
cab.
Back. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, it was designed for. I don't even know who was. It was designed to put your camping gear in the back. That's really what it was for. It had his seat belts as a joke, you know. But, so he was sitting in the front, and then Carson came along, and I remember. So we ran that truck about 9 years.
Oh, wow.
And I remember going out one day. Carson was finally old enough that he could start going out with me. My youngest daughter, Eleanor, she wasn't born. Andrea was probably about 6 months pregnant with her.
Okay.
And I remember going out in the driveway with 2 car seats and trying to figure out how to get these 2 car seats
fit in the truck
to fit in this extended cab truck. And we loved that truck. I mean, I'd put my heart and soul, a lot of welding time. I learned a ton on that thing, you know. And
they're capable rigs.
Oh
too.
gosh, they're so amazing, and I still love that that generation truck. But we ran it, and I remember trying that, and I remember going in and sitting on the couch with Andrea, and I'm like, I gotta sell the truck. And she's like, what? And I'm like, dude, there's no way. I said, we got another kid on the way.
Yeah.
We're not fitting 5 people in the cab of an extra cab Tacoma. Like, I'm delusional to think that this is going to happen.
And what you're leaving out is that you were crying profusely
when
you told us you had to sell the, so you're drying tears.
I love this truck, you know, and we'd been all over the Southwest and with it. But I'm like, we got another kid on the way. Like, it's time to go.
Yeah.
So I ended up buying 2 weeks after Eleanor was born. I went up to come up here to, this area of Utah and bought a 3rd gen 4Runner, which is Little Black, is the one I've got now.
Yep.
And that's the current truck I'm running as far as my normal off-road rig. And what I did was I come up here, I test drove around the block, made sure everything worked. We put it on a car trailer. I hauled it back to Vegas. Okay. I smog checked it in Nevada because we got a smog checker stuff down there.
Yeah.
I smog checked it in Vegas. On the trailer on the way into town. I backed it off the trailer.
You never told me that before.
Yeah, I legit did that. Backed it off the trailer, pulled it in the garage. So I drove this truck all of a mile, if that, and bought it.
Okay.
And I literally drove it in my garage and blew it apart. And I didn't have the room to do both of them, so I took my Taco up to my dad's house and blew it apart in his garage.
So you got two vehicles.
I got
totally
two different houses a half hour away from each other, completely torn apart. And I just literally started swapping parts.
Okay.
Because the first gen Tacoma, the third gen 4Runner, are pretty much the same platform underneath.
Diffs
and that's why I went there. As much as I'd love to have an 80 series, financially, like I couldn't afford to build another truck from scratch. Yep. And this way, I was like, well, I can get into this, have room for the whole family.
Yeah.
And I've still got my Airbnb locker, I've still got my Marlin crawler and the Taco. I can put all this stuff right into this 4Runner.
And this would be like what, a little bit into 2000, right? So maybe like what, 2010 or something, when these vehicles actually were still affordable.
Yeah, because I think I paid, when I bought the third gen 4Runner, I think I gave her $5,000 for it, $4,000 or $5,000 for it,
and that was for a quality one, right?
And
now
that was, I mean, it was a plain Jane, it was a limited. I'll give you that, which actually I didn't want, but it was a limited. Had the rear locker in it. It was in decent shape.
Okay.
The lady, she was, I think, the second owner of it, and the guy, her husband told me, he's like, I've never done anything to this truck. He said, literally, I had to put a brake booster in it, and it had 170,000 miles on it at the time.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, 170,000 mile truck. I paid $5,000 for it, and those trucks today are still bringing probably $7,000-8,000 at this point. So they've gone up in value.
Yeah. And you're at how many miles? I know on one of the expedition trips, which if you want to check those out, you can check out the Rogue Overland YouTube channel. I know on one of the expedition trips you kicked over like 250,000.
Yeah, 250, and I'm sitting right now. I'm sitting at like 278.
Nice
on it. So our family has put 100,000 miles on that truck since I've had it.
Awesome.
And really, mechanically, I've had no issues with it up until this last trip up there, which we could talk about at some point too. But anyway, that's kind of been the progression from, I kind of started in that S10 Blazer and worked myself up.
Yep.
You know, and I'm the kind of guy, I know you, I can't wait to hear your story because you've moved some cars around in your life.
I have moved some cars.
I'm more of a, like, I kind of put my heart and soul into something and then I cry when I have to, like, kicking and screaming have to get rid of it. And that's why I have 5 cars in my driveway right now, which is ridiculous. But yeah, so the 4Runner was kind of, that's the last iteration of my progression forward.
Gotcha. Okay. And then it's probably worth touching on, because this is a new occurrence. I will say it's worth it for the people to know. You do have kind of a new build that just showed up.
I do.
You do. You want to touch on?
Okay.
Touch on.
We could do a whole episode of like my cars, because my cars actually have some pretty fun stories along the way too. But yeah. So the newest one we brought in, I call it the fleet. You know, at this point, is a 2005 Dodge Cummins 2500 3/4 ton truck that I just got from my dad. I've been working him for like 2 years, telling him what a pile of crap this truck is.
Get rid of that truck.
Like, Dad, you got to get a new truck. And he finally, I wore him down. He finally went and bought a new truck, and he on my 40th birthday actually handed me the keys to it and said, here you go. So
nice. Yeah,
that's the newest addition to the fleet, and I'm super excited. And yeah, we've got some plans down the road for it. And
love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
woo, you got some good stuff.
So let's spend the next 2 hours talking about all the cars you've had.
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? I started on dirt, like 3-wheelers, dirt bikes.
Yeah.
You know, I started riding when I was 3. There's a picture of me back in California when you could. My parents loved the ocean, so we spent some time down there when you could be on the beach on dirt bikes and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, there's
Man,
a picture
that's the good old days.
at 3 years old on this little yellow Yamaha 3-wheeler and just rolling on the beach. And then from there, I went to dirt bikes, you know, CR80s, type of stuff like that. And I grew up in Arizona, so I basically could ride from my house out into just endless miles of desert.
Not to cut you off, but there's a story about your dad buying you a bike without your mom knowing too, right? Wasn't there some dirty stuff you told me one time she wasn't happy about?
Oh, man. You know, I don't know. My mom, so my parents are from the East Coast. My dad's from upstate New York. My mom's from Vermont, right?
Okay.
And you know, it just... my mom is an adventurous person, but she's an adventurous person like sort of within her comfort level.
Okay.
Yeah. And so a lot of that stuff, I mean, she never rode dirt bikes. She came from a strict Catholic family, you know, and in her era, like girls were supposed to act a certain way and all of that type of stuff, so everything associated with that. So so it was kind of like on a lot of the things, every time that we would bump up, like, no, you're not getting him we're not putting him on a dirt bike. And where my dad was upstate New York, so they used to go out into the woods and all that type of stuff. And so it just I really what it was with that was I started on a Power Wheel. Like the little Power Wheels, the battery powered thing. Yeah. And they brought 3 back on warranty because I kept burning up the motors. And on the 3rd one, the dude said, this is it. Yeah. Like, we're not warrantying it anymore. Yeah. And so when I burned that one up, that's what it was. My dad was like, well, what we need to do is we need to go gas. And my mom was a little hesitant, I think. So there was that, then CR80. And then from there, I basically learned when you talk about combining trucks, my dad got this S10 Blazer, right, in like early 90s. I can't remember the exact year. Maybe it might have been 89 even, but.
I love the old S10. Yeah. I still to this day, I see one going down the road. I'm like, man, it's such a good looking truck.
Oh, yeah.
They're so cool.
But the one had a blown motor. And so he got a hold of another one that was rolled. Mm-hmm. And so we basically took the body off the one, put the body on the other one to make one working rig truck, if you will. And so I learned how to off-road in that. Like, I remember sort of my earliest off-road lesson, my dad was teaching me with that on this sand hill about momentum. And because I was like, we got to put it in 4 low, Dad. And he's like, all right, well, here. Puts it in 4 low and he tries to crawl up this sand hill. And of course we just get stuck. Yeah. He backs it down. Now he goes, okay, let's put it in 4 high and let's get some momentum. And of course we moseyed right up it. So I basically learned how to wheel in that S10 Blazer. And then I had a Ford Ranger for a bit and did where I grew up in Arizona was a lot of farm roads and deserts. Yeah. So all the stuff you do as a kid, real dumb, racing around farm roads in this pickup truck and driving off in the desert and all of that. And so that's kind of the vehicles that I learned how to wheel in. And then, and you can chime in if I forget anything, but then my wife and I actually did quite a stint there where I was really into sports cars. So
I was about to say, that's because I remember you've talked about a bunch of those. Oh, man, horse traded around.
Yeah, I got a 78 280 Datsun 280Z for $400 because the rings were shot, and my dad and I rebuilt it shade tree mechanic style on the side of the house. We didn't have a garage, so
sandpaper to the head.
And, and so I drove that around for quite a while, and then as I started to get a little I was still in school, but I got a hold of a 3000 GT VR4, the all-wheel drive twin turbo.
Super cool.
Because the throttle positioning sensor was faulty, and so the guy couldn't quite figure out what was going on. So I was able to get that at a significant discount, and I don't remember what $100 worth of sensors to change it out, and it was running. So I actually sold that years later for what I bought it for.
That's the best deals.
Oh, the best. Yeah. And then, the last one prior to sort of coming back to off-road vehicles, I had a AP2 Honda S2000. Okay. So that's the one. Got the second generation, a little more horsepower. Really more usable horsepower. But anyway, and so that was done. That was like a dumb college move. I shouldn't have bought it, but I did. And so I had that. And then my wife, funny thing, she wanted a 4Runner, right? She gets out of college, I'm still in school, and we're like, we need to get you a vehicle, and because she was driving this old Toyota Camry that barely ran still, and so she wants a 4Runner. She's looking all over. My wife is so good with money, super thrifty, finds deals everywhere. She just can't find one in our price range. And she's like, well, there's this Nissan Xterra thing, right?
I like to when you put that.
This is really, it's like this.
It's weird looking, and it's not
a 4Runner, but and I mean, the first car I ever built was a Datsun that I built for me. So I'm kind of like Nissan sort of runs in my blood, right? Yeah. And so I'm like, well, let's go check it out. We go get it. So the first vehicle we buy this together, bone stock, 33,000 miles. I don't remember how far into its life it was. It was a 2001, and I think maybe we got it in like 2005 or something, right? So it's a little old. And this dude just, I mean, it still had the factory Nerf bars and the mud flaps on it.
He basically just drove it back and forth to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
That was it,
And he had all the paperwork. So we get a hold of this thing and, well, you know me, like, things from the factory aren't built the way they're supposed to be built. So I'm sort of pushing her the best I can, you know, well, maybe we get some sliders, you know, and then...
And I'm laughing because when I bought my Tacoma, the words literally come out of my mouth. I'm like, this is the most capable rig I've ever had. I won't have to do nothing to this thing.
Oh, yeah.
And literally a month later, I'm throwing a Daystar Spacer lift underneath it and just like, you know, she's like, what happened to leaving it alone? So I've had that conversation before, and she doesn't buy it anymore, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, and I love my wife. She's just... accepted. She knows, right?
Yeah.
When we got her most recent vehicle, she actually said, we'll chat on that briefly, but she actually said, what's the first thing you're going to do to it? She didn't even ask anymore.
Ask if you're going to mess with it. She's like, what are you going to do?
Yeah. So long story short, that's on Conius. That's the yellow Xterra that everybody sees. And most of these rigs we're talking about, you can find on the YouTube channel. We have walk around videos of them. But yeah, so that's on Conius. And on Conius was... I mean, it was it for the longest time, and it went from, you know, factory to, you know, the torsion bar crank lift, then a legitimate 3-inch lift, and then I'm wheeling behind this guy in Moab, an event that unfortunately potentially died this year due to permitting issues, but gone Moab, and so I follow him on day one on like Cane Creek or something, and then the next day on Hell's Revenge. And man, he's got a solid axle swap, and I'm making it. I'm doing all the stuff. You know, I'm open, but I got crawler gears in the transfer case, and I'm on 30.
I didn't really do the crawlers gears before that. Okay.
Yeah, and I tell a lot of people, you know, because you only need lockers when your wheel's off the ground. Yeah. Right. So I tell a lot of people, like, if it's the locker or the crawler gears in that rig, get the crawler gears, because your modular, the modularity that you have, if I'm using the right word, or sensitivity of the throttle is much better with those crawler gears, right?
We can spin a whole lot. Yeah. You know me, I'm all about the crawler gears, so we can have a whole conversation about that.
285,000 to 1 in Little Black. But yeah, so long story, I'm kind of babbling on, but long story short, I got home from there, and I said to Vicky, I said, I need to, at this point, because she's driving, she's driving a Tacoma at this point, because on Conius is pretty far in its life, so I'm daily driving it.
She just gave up on that. She did, at that point.
And so I said, I need to solid axle swap this thing. So I started looking around for used parts, and solid axle swapped it, and it's what it is now. And like I said, if you want to see fully what it is now, you can check out our YouTube channel. But so that was it for a long time. She had a Tacoma. She got a second-gen Tacoma. And same thing, we start having kids. And believe it or not, besides sliders, that got left alone. Because I put white knuckle sliders off of everything. And they're not sponsoring the show or anything. But I just really like their product. So I put white knuckle sliders on it. And then that was it. And same thing, right? We get to that point where we can't fit enough car seats in it without our knees being in the dashboard.
It was an extended cab too, wasn't it?
That one was the 4-door.
Oh, it was a 4. They were still pretty tight.
Yeah, and
they were still pretty tight.
With a rear-facing car seat, it puts the
well, it pretty much has to go in the middle between the front seats.
So once we needed that second seat, it was a no-go. Yeah. So she gets rid of that, and then a lot of years in a van, kids start showing up, and then this is where I get into the car shuffle that you were talking about. I say, we've got Onconius, which is a fantastic wheeler, but when we're doing these long, Mike, for everybody here, like our backgrounds are in rock crawling. Yeah. And we've always camped, but then as quote unquote overlanding progressed, and really for us it was as kids came along, we started doing lighter trips. And I said to my wife, we need something. I mean, we can all live in Onconius, and we do. We've done it. We've spent 9 days up in Colorado, all packed in like sardines. But I said, the kids are getting bigger. I've got a couple girls. They need some space. Let's look into something more family oriented. So we built a 3rd-gen Tacoma called Helios after the Greek god of the sun, and it was. I cry a little bit every day when I think about the fact that I sold that rig, but in COVID it wasn't what we needed, unfortunately. But the gist of it was, 3-inch lift, lockers front and back. We had like a Toy Tech lift on it. And again, there's a walk around video of it on the website. But Adventure Trailers Habitat. And that was
awesome.
Fantastic.
It was a cool rig.
For all 5 of us to be able to have living and sleeping space. But in COVID, because my family was doing a lot of traveling without me, and then I would sort of fly to catch up to them as I was leapfrogging weeks of work, we needed something more secure. So I loved that build. Besides the issues that everybody has with 3rd gen, right?
Yeah.
With the transmission and the engine and all that. But it was a great build. So we sell that off, and then we get a Nissan NV3500 van.
Which is super cool.
Yeah.
I love that truck.
Pop top, we put a pop top on it, converted to 4-wheel drive. We got with, we got a locker in the front, Niztec lifts, and Icon. We got together and we put a suspension and lift on it. And so that thing is really capable. And we've been out before where, I'm not going to take that on any major rock crawling trail, but it goes most places you would want to camp.
Well, we had it up in the Pacific Northwest and man, running the BDR and out in the sand dune. Like it doesn't, that truck's funny, man. I call it a truck because it's got a solid frame underneath it and stuff. So I keep calling it a truck, but the van.
Yep.
And it doesn't look natural. Like seeing you out there with that V8 screaming and you're cutting up and down dunes and stuff. It's like, what's the Star Wars? Oh my gosh, dude, I should know this. The sand, not the sand crawler, the sand crawler where they sell all parts out of it.
Oh, gosh, Nick Schulte would know exactly what that thing is called.
Everybody's yelling at me right now. I'm yelling at me. My kids are yelling at me right now. Dude, I'm like, anyway, it's like watching that go through the desert up in the dunes because it doesn't look natural up there because it's so freaking big. But man, it works great.
Oh man, it's on that Titan XD frame, and it really is. It's a great vehicle, and we dubbed it the Adventure Van. We named it Bertha because she's a big girl.
Yes, she is.
And but the thing is we built that to live comfortably for extended periods of time with all 5 of us. Because like we go out with our kids. We don't leave our kids at home once or twice a year maybe. And so and to be able to haul dirt bikes, haul mountain bikes, take paddle boards, because we do all that stuff. And so it's been a really great build for that. And then, unless I'm missing anything else, my wife drove a minivan for many, many years, Toyota Sienna.
Which flexes really great. We know that.
We did. We flexed it at Cascadia Vehicle Trends.
Thank you, CVT, and your forklift.
That was awesome. Oh, man, that was a great day.
Yeah.
But, and at their grand opening is when we did that, so anyway, so she's daily in a Sienna. We got almost 300,000 miles on that thing, and then just within the last month, I think.
Got your newest.
She swapped out her daily for it is a Colorado ZR2 with the Duramax engine. The last year they make the Duramax.
Yeah.
And so
Chevy, bring back the Duramax.
Yeah, bring it back.
Bring us the diesels back, everybody.
Oh my gosh,
come on.
Seriously, that is such a great little rig. I mean, I almost faint, like my body doesn't know how to do this, but I actually have not done anything to it yet.
I know.
But I'm thinking about the
shopping
list.
cart is full, though. I know that.
So, but no, so that's her daily, and we've got some fun plans in the Rogue Overland world of what we're going to do with that. We'll be announcing that stuff later, as you know. You and I have chatted a little bit on that, but yeah, so I think that's it, unless I've missed anything.
Yeah, I think that's all the ones I've known you've got, and you've got a couple of the little side projects we ought to get into one of these days. But
one of these days,
I do too. We can. But you said something there that kind of keyed up to my next build, and kind of where we're both, I think, kind of filling out. You said with Big Bertha there with that van, you can pull the dirt bikes, you can throw the X on a trailer.
Yeah.
And I think for both of us, that's kind of where we're leaning to, and with my new rig, because you and I have talked about this before, is that's kind of my next step is I'm trying to find like an older sliding camper to put in the back of that.
Of the
Cummins, the Ram. And, to kind of be in that same spot you were in. So you can pull into a place, walk inside, have a place to sleep.
Yeah.
But you could throw the car trailer on the back with Little Black to go to Moab, or you can throw the trailer on the back with all the dirt bikes to go to Moab again, or wherever, and up the mountains and stuff. And that's, so I think we're both kind of,
we're at that spot.
Yeah, we're both kind of at that same spot where it's like, man, it's, it's nice to not sleep on the ground, but it's nice to have somewhere to get out of the wind and the rain and the weather.
Right.
Or maybe go incognito in a Walmart parking lot while you're putting down miles, so I think we're both in that same spot. And you guys with Bertha, you guys have, it's a pretty cool setup for that.
It is. I've got some electrical and stuff to still do in the back, but yeah, it's and I think for everybody listening, since this is sort of the intro show, and we want to provide a lot of information, and today we're talking about us, so everybody understands where we're coming from. Yeah. I think that's the thing is, everybody looks and they say, well, this is what overlanding should be, or camping or wheeling or whatever you want to call it. I like to call it adventuring. And, we've done it. I mean, we've driven thousands of miles to go up in the vehicle, live out of it, highway miles for a full day to run Rubicon Trail, for, 2-3 days, then highway miles home.
On rigs that we've literally beat the tar out of for 3 days
on the
Rubicon, just like you're saying, and then drive. So we're definitely like, don't get us wrong, we are not building trailer queens here. It's 270,000 miles on mine, and I don't know how much is on yours, but I know it's up there.
Yeah, it's almost 250. Yeah,
that's a lot of getting the tar beat off of them on Death Valley roads and stuff.
Oh yeah,
and then attempting to do 75 mile an hour all the way home for a day straight. So
which is why I think we both killed our rigs in the same month span.
We should talk about that in an episode.
Well, I think
how I single-handedly destroyed the entire Rogue Overland community.
Oh my gosh, that is I think that is a show in and of itself.
Yeah.
But and you're right, and I think that's the thing to clarify is, adventuring is a progression. Our kids were young we didn't have kids for a while, and then our kids were young at one point where they just go and do whatever you want to do. Well, now they're old enough where they have opinions and they have things they want to do. So
lots of opinions.
So they're getting into the dirt biking and and the RC rock crawlers and this and that. And so you're right. Can we still jump in Little Black and Onconius once I get the engine back in? And and can we drive out to some drive out to Moab and wheel for 3 days and then drive them home and live out of them? Yeah, we can. Yeah. But what we've found is we're at a point in our life where it's also nice to say, okay, well, hey, if all we're interested in doing is hitting some trails around Moab, then why not just tow the rigs out there? It's not like we're going out in the boonies, and we need to be in the vehicles all the time. Let's make the highway miles a little more comfortable.
And here's the other side of that, and maybe you've thought about this, and I haven't really talked to Andrea about this, so hopefully she's not watching, but you can kind of take the trails up a notch too when you've got a car trailer to bring them home on at the end of the day.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And not to say that I want to drive like an idiot off-road, because I do still care about the way my truck looks. Like, I don't want to roll it over. Like, I have no interest in that. But, as we've progressed, we have really started pushing these trucks harder and harder and harder.
Yep.
And there have been times that I've been on obstacles myself and went, boy, I hope this doesn't go too far south, because I've got to get this thing 1,000 miles home.
Yeah.
There's definitely a little bit of comfort there, a little bit of relief there, knowing, hey, 10 miles from here, I've got a trailer I can put this thing on, worst case scenario. So I think that's going to change things for it a little bit too.
I think you nailed it, because I remember Nick Schulte. Nick Schulte's one of the Rogue Overland crew as well. Yeah. He's got the silver Xterra, which also walk around video if you want to look into that. But I remember when he first got his Duramax, and gosh, I think this was about 8-9 years ago. And he said to me, he goes, I'm not as worried on the trails anymore because I know that I have a tow rig that can just get it home if we need to. And I think you're right. You and I have very good representations of the vehicles they are. I mean, Little Black is a good looking 4Runner. Yeah. All the sheet metal pretty much intact. Onconius is 85%. is a good looking first gen with most of the sheet metal intact and in good shape. And so it's not that we want to go out and beat them, but you're right. Having a tow rig does sort of open the door to be able to say, You know what? I will try that. You and I carry spare parts, but you know, if it really goes south, I know we'll get it off the trail.
Only got to get it 10 miles home and not 1,000 miles home.
And then we'll tell it.
And they're older, man. I mean, we are pushing these rigs, and we, we're not kidding ourselves. I mean, we are running rigs super hard.
Oh yeah.
I'm probably a little overweight, when we're fully loaded to go on down the road, but I mean, 277,000 miles, hard miles on an older rig, stuff happens. Yeah. And I think both of us are starting to see that with these rigs too.
Yeah,
the last couple months.
Man, yeah, you should have never took those stickers off. I'll give you the short version. Is he sort of jinxed everybody because he took the Rogue Overland stickers off off the side of his rig for a while to polish the paint.
Which I don't even know why. I still never did. So
took him a bit to get back to it, and everybody's rigs started having problems. We told him that he offended the Overland gods.
I angered the Overland gods, and I put stickers back on, poured a little whiskey out. I think we're in good graces again. Yeah. But Nick is obviously still recouping from that, and I think we're another few months out with the engine shop. But But yeah, so I mean, definitely. But anyway, all that to say, you can, and we're going to get, I think, episode 2. We're going to talk about those first mods that we went through to kind of get to build up to the point where we're at. But all that to say is, I've been doing it 20 years, I think, off-road now. Wow, sound really old when I say it like that.
I know, right?
But, the two of us together and individually before we met have really we've kind of been through all those steps. And even now we're kind of learning what the next stage of that looks like to us. I'm not ready for a rock buggy.
No.
As much fun as that would be, I still like going the trails that push me, that challenge me.
Yeah.
We can talk about how on the last road trip, I ended up with taking my wife's 4th Gen 4Runner.
That's right.
Because, my rig was broke in multiple pieces. But, I kind of found when I went back with that truck, one of the things I found was I'm having fun wheeling a truck on 32s with open diffs. It challenges you in a different way.
Totally.
So, it's fun. It's fun for me to see that progression forward, but it's also kind of fun to have in a rig that, you can still push on these trails. And you don't have to go to the King of the Hammers on the hardest freaking trail you can find to have a good time.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm still at. So, that's kind of the progression for me and kind of moving forward where I'm looking. But
yeah, I think you're spot on that. And something to touch on is from this intro show, don't take it that you're listening to some guys that just out there breaking stuff all the time, because that's not the case. It's just funny because we have 2 rigs that were down at the same time. And Mike, I'd never seen Mike break on a trail. A wheel bearing went bad driving home from Colorado. We lived out of the rigs for I think it was 9 days hitting all the trails. And a couple actually harder than we expected trails too. Ran across that Black Pearl or Diamond Trail outside of Crested Butte.
That was such a fun trail.
It was amazing, right?
But that was a wheel bearing that had spent the last 90,000 miles overloaded and had 270,000 miles on it. But anyway.
And we were blasting back on the highway. Onconius has never...
I can't even be mad about that.
Onconius has never left me stranded until this last Rogue Overland Expedition trip, which that video will either be out just before this show goes live or just after, but you can check out that adventure. But basically, same thing. I'm blasting down the highway and timing belt pukes a bunch of the teeth, and it's a critical clearance engine, and so basically engine has to come out and get broke down. So it's not, don't think that we're coming from a background of be prepared, do your maintenance on your vehicles, a wheeling style that's allowed us to do many highly challenging trails and really, knock on wood, not break.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, stuff happens. I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, you play with fire long enough, you're going to get burned.
Oh, yeah.
And honestly, we've been really, really lucky. We've had a little string of bad luck. But I mean, as hard as we've pushed these rigs over the last few years, my gosh, man, I can't even be mad about it. I sat on the side of the road for 4 hours waiting for my new truck to come get me and tow me home.
Yep.
You know, just laughing because I'm like, my gosh, this is the first time I've had issues with this. You know, but
that's right. I played taxi back and forth to the Beaver Creamery so that we could all go get ice cream.
Man, I love Beaver. Yeah. I mean, I can't even be mad about it. And,
no.
You know, but you know, and that's a good lead into a future episode that I think we're going to do about new rigs versus old rigs, and we've got some experience with both. So that's something that we're going to talk about in the future.
Yeah, I think unless you do, Mike, I guess I'd just say, you know, if you're interested in having questions answered about the off-roading, about like, hey, what should I pack for an overland trip? What does preparing a vehicle for a trip look like? Should I do a pickup truck or an SUV? You know, what type of food should I bring?
Yeah.
What's it like to be out with kids? Mike and I are going to try to bring a unique point of view where we really have experience in all these aspects, and also, when necessary, bring information from research that we'll do if you know if it's a more technical question.
Because we are definitely not the end-all smart of everything. There's a lot of people smarter than us in a lot of subjects, and we're hoping to get a lot of those people on to come talk about that stuff too.
Yep, we'll bring people on to the show, so that's kind of what the show's going to be about. So if it's something that you're interested in, keep an eye. We will be dropping episodes the first and third Sunday afternoon of every month.
Yep.
Yeah. Anything else you think?
I think that's it. I think we're probably two boring people that we've already talked enough about ourselves. So
Well,
us and all of our broken trucks.
Yeah,
I mean, what else is there
trucks.
you need to know?
All right. Well, Mike, where can they find us?
You can find us at all the normal social media stuff. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Yep. YouTube, obviously. We've got a ton of videos on YouTube that we've been putting out for years now. All of our different adventures, walk-arounds of some of these rigs we've talked about. I know we've got a bunch of friends that roll with us too that we're looking at doing walk-arounds of their amazing rigs.
Yeah.
Check those out.
That's at Rogue Overland.
At Rogue Overland, yeah.
Yep.
And then obviously the podcast channels too. We're going to be out there on as many of them as we can figure out how to get on. So
I love it.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you guys. We appreciate it.
Yeah. We'll see you on the trail.
See you on the trail.
Copyright Rogue Overland 2023. All rights reserved.